In your discussion with Sam Harris, you talked a bit about giving certain people no platform to discuss their ideas, who might be on whatever end of the spectrum, could be both ends.
Sure.
Where do you draw the line in terms of censorship? I mean, censorship would be one way to get that out, but where do you? I mean, it's not a solution, as we all know. So how do you see that whole situation? Shall we give people a platform? Shouldn't we?
I think there is a line, but I think I've also changed my opinion somewhat on that since then. I used to believe that, and certainly hate speech that affects somebody so much that it hurts them physically or terrorizes them or, causes other people to harm others. That, I think there's a line there, right? But I do believe we should be able to say whatever we think, but also know that there are repercussions for that. There's no freedom on your speech to other people. In America, we have freedom of speech, but that is our freedom against the government to infringe on our speech, not against each other. There's no such thing as a hate speech law in America. There is no, we have free speech. But when that causes violence, when that incites a movement that is killing people on a regular basis, in fact, is killing people more than any other radical terrorist extremist group in our country, there's a line there. But I think the way I've changed my opinion is that the way to combat hate speech is with more speech. It's with education. It's not by limiting it, because when you limit speech, you embody the same ideas of the people that you are fighting against, who want to limit you. So it just doesn't make sense to me. And that's why I don't believe violence can solve violence either.
And how can people, especially young people, filter? I mean, if there's speech and more speech and more speech, at some point it just gets
sure
to look through the whole thing. So what?
We have to be responsible adults and give them information that is beneficial for them and doesn't divide or hurt them. We can say, well, how can young people, what can they believe? Well, it's up to us to give them the information, for them to digest. So we have to look at ourselves. We're creating this problem. And I say we as kind of, just the general society. We're creating this world. We're paying for it. We're buying into it. We're enabling it, and we're leaving it as a legacy for the next generation to deal with. And frankly, I think they're far more equipped than we are to deal with it, to be honest, because I think the world has progressed. I think we understand things more than my generation did, and your generation, does now. But that doesn't remove the responsibility from us to fix it now. Because they're better equipped to deal with it. It's our responsibility to them to make sure that they don't have to deal with it, or at least have, something to work from.
I see. The people that you help to disengage, at what point in their life are they usually, and what are the biggest challenges that they face?
That's a good question. I mean, they range in every age, and they're male and female, and every person's different on what they need. I've worked with 15-year-old boys, 17-year-old girls, 60-year-old men, 40-year-old women. It's certainly more male-dominated. Extremist movements are more male-dominated, but the female component is actually growing because they've learned that they can use women to be the mouthpieces, the propagandists, because it attracts men. So they've gotten a little bit savvier in that respect. But really it is about just building resilience in the human being and connecting them to knowledge. And knowledge is sometimes meeting somebody. So that's typically what I do with everybody.
Okay. The person who introduced you 25 or 30 years ago, Clark, did you ever get in touch with him again?
That is the mystery of my life, my friend, because I can tell you that after he went to prison, so he went to prison when I was 16 years old. And that's when I was the last person remaining. Everybody had gone to prison by that point. So that's when I took over leadership of the organization. He went to prison. I saw him one time in 1994. 1995. Yes, out of prison. I was out of the movement at the time, and he showed up at an event that I was doing with a band that was not a political band. And he didn't say hello. He didn't, he recognized me. I recognized him. It was very uncomfortable. We didn't speak. It was at a concert, so it was easy to get lost in the crowd, so I didn't have to see him. And I haven't seen him or heard from him since. And in fact, when I was writing my book, I tried to, pull public information, related to his birthday and things like that. So I had things accurate in the book. And every place that I knew to look, I knew where he was born. I knew, his birthday. There were no records found of this man with this name, with this birthday, or with this prison record.
Oh, okay. So he lived under a false identity?
I don't know. I wish I could tell you. I wish I knew the answer to it. But for all purposes, he's disappeared. He's a ghost, and he never existed.
And from your former peers that were in touch with him?
I mean, he's a real person. Many, many people have met him. He was the first American neo-Nazi skinhead leader. He started this movement.
You never heard from anyone who got in touch with him again? It's just...
I've heard stories, legends, and rumors, but there's no unless I have information wrong, which I don't think I do, because it's the same information everybody has. It's a mystery. I wish I knew the answer to that, because it would help me with a lot. I want closure. Clark Reed Martell, born in Billings, Montana, does not exist anywhere on Earth today that I'm aware of.
Really strange indeed.
Maybe he died as a homeless person and no record was filed of his death. I don't know, but let's not get into conspiracy theory.
Yeah. At the time when you left the organization, you also disconnected from your family, from your wife, from your 2 sons at that point, I believe.
Disconnecting from her is a very nice way to put that. Thank you. She divorced me and she took the children.
Okay.
But yes, I lost everything. I lost my business because I walked away after I became embarrassed to sell the racist music. I removed it from the store, and it was so much of my revenue, 75%, that I couldn't sustain the store anymore. So I closed the store. I didn't have a great relationship with my parents because I was angry at them still, and they tried, but I was not having it. My wife and my children left, and I walked away from the movement. I lost everything. I lost everything that I knew who I was, both for my family and the hope for the future, and who I had been for 8 years. And I wish I could tell you I was brave and that I told them, I told them off or something like that. And, I said, I walked away quietly and I was afraid. I ran because I didn't want to admit my past to people. I tried to make new friends. I never talked about who I was. And until I couldn't anymore.
Did you have a chance to reconnect
with my family?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, my kids are now 26 and 24 years old. They're not babies anymore. But yeah, no, I never lost touch with them. That was always very important. As I was always, even though we were divorced, I was always there for them. I had, shared custody every weekend, and my parents, of course, I've reconnected with them. They never gave up on me. All these people who never gave up on me saved my life, and I owe them everything.
What do you think? What do they think about you?
I think they're proud. I think, I think I'm just trying to be a human being. So it's very uncomfortable for me when people, and I think my parents and my family knows that this is just regular business. We should all be doing, these things. We should all be compassionate. We should all have empathy for marginalized people. So, I know that they're proud of me. But I also think that they know I don't like compliments very much.
I see. The people that you've hurt in the past, there were a lot of people, I guess. Did you ever get a chance to reconnect with those people, to apologize, or to explain your situation, to explain where you are now?
Some of them, the ones that I could find, of course. There were some that were strangers. I had no idea who they were, and for them, I hope the work that I'm doing to help people disengage and talking about these issues is providing some comfort to them. I know I could never apologize for that. An apology makes me feel better. It doesn't do anything for anybody else. And for the people I have been able to connect, I've been lucky enough to find them and receive their forgiveness. One of them was the old security guard from my high school, a black man who I had terrorized when I was in school. I had protested. There were fights. I had fought with him, and I met him one day, by chance, by fate. And I was so embarrassed. I hadn't talked about my past with anybody. And when I saw him, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say to him. And I just apologized. I said, I'm sorry. And he made me promise, one, after forgiving me, to tell my story, and two, that I wouldn't just apologize because, again, that makes me feel better. It did nothing for him, that I would make amends. And I've been doing that, I think, for almost 20 years now. So.
What are warning signs in terms of what are early warning signs that people are getting radicalized? Are there certain things that you can see that are typical for people who get radicalized? Something that parents can look out for, that friends can see potentially?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not rocket science. I think that we start to become radicalized the day we're born, and it's just when we find that outlet that radicalization happens. So, ideology is like a permission slip. It's like the driver's license that says, okay, now you can be angry and be really loud about it. But, nobody wakes up with a swastika tattoo or hating anybody or, interested in joining a cult or becoming a school shooter or doing any of these things. That's all extremism. Or even falling into sex trafficking or becoming addicted to drugs. That's extremism lifestyle. So all the warning signs are the same. Somebody who's marginalized, somebody who's lonely, who doesn't have an outlet or a good foundation, who doesn't have, opportunity. Same can be said about gangs in my city of Chicago. Where people aren't supported or don't feel they have a positive outlet. Sometimes the only option is not a positive outlet. And that's an unfortunate situation that people, don't have access to the help that they need, whether it's therapy or a job, because desperation really leads to extremism. It's not about heroism. It's not about me wanting to save something. It's about me wanting to destroy something.
Has it become harder to identify those people? Because, 30 years ago, you were shaving your heads and, wearing the Spartans and white shoelaces and everything. Nowadays, radicals are wearing suits and are fully integrated in society. They have stable jobs and other forms of communicating. So has it become harder to find those people, identify those people, and work against those people?
Absolutely. I mean, our mission back then was to terrify people by being seen. I mean, that was part of it. There were fewer of us, at least, who were extremists at that point. But at one point, we recognized that we were too extreme, that we were turning people away that maybe we could have recruited if we just maybe were a little bit softer, if we just maybe made our words not so offensive, but had the same meaning. Essentially we traded the boots for suits. 30 years ago, we recognized that, and we encouraged people to get jobs in education and become teachers and to become police officers and join the military to get training and even run for politics if their record was clean. Here we are. It is much more difficult to see what is coming because they are our neighbors and they look like you and they look like me now and like our friends and our family and our doctors and our lawyers. And that's the unfortunate situation. Is it's very difficult to know what extremism is and what the impact is in the world without somebody opening their mouth or committing an action. And now it's not about waving a flag anymore. It's about being part of the fabric.
I see. After you've left, you wrote about that you fell into a deep depression because you lost your sense of meaning. You had to disconnect from everyone that was your literal or virtual family in a way. How did you pull yourself out of that?
It wasn't easy, let me tell you, because I would wake up wishing that I hadn't every day. I got an opportunity. A friend urged me to not die. She said, "I don't want to see you die." Basically, after 5 years of this, she, recognized it. And she urged me to go apply for a job at a company that she worked. And it was a very small company that none of your viewers have ever heard of, called IBM. And I thought I thought she was crazy because, here I am, this ex-Nazi with I still had the tattoos. I hadn't gone to college. I'd been kicked out of 6 high schools, one of them twice. And I didn't even own a computer, I don't even think, at the time. It was ridiculous, for me to even consider it. But I went. She was a good friend, and I didn't want to let her down. And they asked me to come back for another interview, and eventually they offered me a job. And it was an entry-level position. It was not, a computer programmer. It was installing computers at businesses and universities and schools. And I was thrilled. That was hope for me. And then they told me where I'd be going to install those computers on my first day of work. And when they told me it was my old high school, the same one I'd been kicked out of twice, and they had no idea about my past, suddenly I wasn't so hopeful anymore. Suddenly I was terrified again. And but I worked through it, and that's where I met the security guard, who really gave me a second chance. And it just started there, and my life changed immediately.
Are you guys still in touch, or is he still alive?
He's still alive. I met him again for the first time in maybe 18 years, just a few months ago. And now we communicate on a regular basis. We plan on going fishing soon. And he's an amazing guy. I mean, he told me one time, he said, I didn't just raise you in that school. I didn't just have, a job to keep my eye over you. I raised thousands of you. And I saw thousands of people like you, not that believed in the same thing, but that could have, or that could have gone a different way. And he's the one who told me, it's not in your DNA to do that. You just found that path, or frankly, that path found you when you weren't looking for it, but you were looking for something.
You did a lot of things that I'm sure you regret.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Of all these things, what's the biggest regret?
That's a really tough question because there are so many. I regret every time I hurt somebody. I regret every time I hurt somebody by recruiting them and bringing them into a movement that maybe never would have found had it not been for me. I regret the seeds that I planted years ago that still are growing, into weeds today. I regret not being there enough for my brother during those years because, after I left the movement, we'd grown apart, and then he was murdered, and I never got the opportunity to spend that time with him. He wanted to be like me. He didn't get involved in the same things that I did, but he looked up to me, and I wasn't there when he was young, the same way that, maybe my parents weren't there for me. So I feel that I failed him, and I really try and be that brother now for everybody else who maybe needs a little bit of help, just like that soccer coach. People who need help, how can they reach out to you? Can you talk about what's the best way to contact you and your organizations? Sure. I'm pretty easy to find. They can just Google my name and they'll have a multitude of ways to contact me. But the easiest way is to just go to my website and use the form there. And it's ChristianPicciolini.com. I'll trust that you'll maybe put a graphic because it's not an easy name to spell, as you know. They can contact me there or on social media. I get requests from people every day, or every time I speak, it's inevitable somebody will come up to me and say, I'm in the same boat that you were in, and I'd like to talk about it. I encourage people to not be afraid. Everything is confidential. I'm not interested in arguing with them or changing their mind. I want them to change their own mind based on new information. And
what if people are afraid of repercussions from their peers and from their family in a way? What could you tell them to get them to do that step, to take the step, and to do the first step to leave these organizations?
they should be worried. It is dangerous. It can be. But I can tell them it's more dangerous if they stay, that their end will come sooner. Trust me, if they are involved with these organizations rather than being brave enough or finding the courage to leave now. And I know it's not easy, but that's why there are people like me, people who have left. And I'm not the only one. There are others like me, many others who've left. And we're here to help them through that transition.
That's amazing. Christian, I know you have another interview coming up, so I don't want to keep you too long. I always end these conversations with two questions that I'm asking everybody. The first question is, this is a series of interviews with extraordinary people from across the globe, from all different areas of life. Who would you consider an extraordinary person that I might even talk to next?
Wow.
Someone that inspired you, someone that changes the world, someone that's...
I feel like every person I meet that I work with inspires me. But I would say there's an extraordinary individual. Her name is Shannon Martinez. I knew her 25 years ago. We were both involved in this movement, and we reconnected later. And she's now become one of my best friends. She's the mother of 7 children. She's an amazing person. She's lived a very transformative and traumatic life. And I think her story is powerful. And I think it's one that both men and women need to hear, especially in this time when, we're really trying to understand how it is we're breaking this world even further and hopefully, now trying to fix it. So I'm happy to put you in touch with her, but she's an amazing human being.
I will reach out to her. Sounds very interesting. And finally, to close the conversation with your message, what's your core message that's close to your hearts to anyone who's watching or listening to this podcast?
Can I give them 2?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
One's a longer one. One's a super easy one. But the longer one is really just, I challenge people. Find somebody that you think is undeserving of your compassion and give it to them. And then pay attention, because it changes people, and getting it from the people we least deserve it from is so powerful. And they need it the most. I guarantee it. And my second one is very simple. It's 3 words. Somebody challenged me one time to come up with a mission statement for my life. 3 words.
That's short for a mission.
And it was hard. And I thought about it, and then I came up with it. And I've tried to live every decision or moment by those 3 words. And it's just make good happen. If it doesn't make good happen, if it doesn't fit that definition or criteria, probably shouldn't do it. And it's worked pretty well so far.
Christian, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure talking to you. And
thank you.
I hope to talk to you very soon again.
Thanks, Rob. I appreciate it.
All the best. Bye-bye.
Here comes the sunshine and burns away clouds like they never were.